Wisdom by Balthasar Gracian. Translated by Joseph Jacobs. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Sandra Schmidt. To the reader. No laws for the just, no counsels for the wise. Yet no one ever knew as much as he had need. One thing you must forgive, another thank me for. I have called this manual of worldly wisdom an oracle, for it is one in curtness and sententiousness. On the other hand, I offer you in one all the 12 works of Gracian. Each of these is so highly thought of that his prudent man had scarcely appeared in Spain than it was enjoyed among the French, in whose language it was translated, and at whose court it was printed. May this be Wisdom's bill of fare at the banquet of her sages, in which she inscribes the items of the Feast of Reason, to be found in Gracian's other works. Don Vincencio Juan de Lastanosa. 1. Everything is at its acme, especially the art of making one's way in the world. There is more required nowadays to make a single wise man than formerly to make 7 sages, and more is needed nowadays to deal with a single person than was required with a whole people in former times. 2. Character and intellect. The 2 poles of our capacity, one without the other, is but halfway to happiness. Intellect suffices not, character is also needed. On the other hand, it is the fool's misfortune to fail in obtaining the position, the employment, the neighborhood, and the circle of friends that suit him. 3. Keep matters for a time in suspense. Admiration at their novelty heightens the value of your achievements. It is both useless and insipid to play with the cards on the table. If you do not declare yourself immediately, you arouse expectation, especially when the importance of your position makes you the object of general attention. Mix a little mystery with everything, and the very mystery arouses veneration. And when you explain, be not too explicit, just as you do not expose your inmost thoughts in ordinary intercourse. Cautious silence is the holy of holies of worldly wisdom. A resolution declared is never highly thought of. It only leaves room for criticism, and if it happens to fail, you are doubly unfortunate. Besides, you imitate the divine way when you cause men to wonder and watch. 4. Knowledge and courage are the elements of greatness. They give immortality, because they are immortal. Each is as much as he knows, and the wise can do anything. A man without knowledge, a world without light. Wisdom and strength, eyes and hands. Knowledge without courage is sterile. 5. Create a feeling of dependence. Not he that adorns, but he that adores makes a divinity. The wise man would rather see men needing him than thanking him. To keep them on the threshold of hope is diplomatic. To trust to their gratitude, boorish. Hope has a good memory, gratitude a bad one. More is to be got from dependence than from courtesy. He that has satisfied his thirst turns his back on the well, and the orange once sucked falls from the golden platter into the waste-basket. When dependence disappears, good behavior goes with it as well as respect. Let it be one of the chief lessons of experience to keep hope alive, without entirely satisfying it, by preserving it to make oneself always needed, even by a patron on the throne. But let not silence be carried to excess, lest you go wrong. Nor let another's failing grow incurable for the sake of your own advantage. 6. A man at his highest point. We are not born perfect. Every day we develop in our personality and in our calling, till we reach the highest point of our completed being, to the full round of our accomplishments, of our excellences. This is known by the purity of our taste, the clearness of our thought, the maturity of our judgment, and the firmness of our will. Some never arrive at being complete. Somewhat is always wanting. others ripen too late. The complete man, wise in speech, prudent in act, is admitted to the familiar intimacy of discreet persons, is even sought for by them. 7. Avoid victories over superiors. All victories breed hate, and that over your superior is foolish or fatal. Superiority is always detested, a fortiori superiority over superiority. Caution can gloss over common advantages. For example, good looks may be cloaked by careless attire. There be some that will grant you precedence in good luck or good temper, but none in good sense, least of all a prince. For good sense is a royal prerogative. Any claim to that is a case of lèse-majesté. They are princes, and wish to be so in that most princely of qualities. They will allow a man to help them, but not to surpass them, and will have any advice tendered them appear like a recollection of something they have forgotten, rather than as a guide to something they cannot find. The stars teach us this finesse with happy tact. Though they are his children, and brilliant like him, they never rival the brilliancy of the sun. 8. To be without passions. 'Tis a privilege of the highest order of mind. Their very eminence redeems them from being affected by transient and low impulses. There is no higher rule than the one over oneself, over one's impulses. There is the triumph of free will. While passion rules the character, no aiming at high office, the less the higher. It is the only refined way of avoiding scandals. Nay, 'tis the shortest way back to good repute. 9. Avoid the faults of your nation. Water shares the good or bad qualities of the strata through which it flows, and man those of the climate in which he is born. Some owe more than others to their native land, because there is a more favourable sky in the zenith. There is not a nation even among the most civilized that has not some fault peculiar to itself, which other nations blame by way of boast or as a warning. 'Tis a triumph of cleverness to correct in oneself such national failings, or even to hide them. You get great credit for being unique among your fellows, and as it is less expected of you, it is esteemed the more. There are also family failings as well as faults of position, of office, or of age. If these all meet in one person and are not carefully guarded against, they make an intolerable monster. 10. Fortune and fame. Where the one is fickle, the other is enduring. The first for life, the second afterwards. The one against envy, the other against oblivion. Fortune is desired, at times assisted. Fame is earned. The desire for fame springs from man's best part. It was and is the sister of the giants. It always goes to extremes. Horrible monsters, or brilliant prodigies. End of section 3. Of Worldly Wisdom by Balthasar Gracian. Translated by Joseph Jacobs. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Sandra Schmidt. 11. Cultivate those who can teach you. Let friendly intercourse be a school of knowledge, and culture be taught through conversation. Thus you make your friends your teachers, and mingle the pleasures of conversation with the advantages of instruction. Sensible persons thus enjoy alternating pleasures. They reap applause for what they say, and gain instruction from what they hear. We are always attracted to others by our own interest, but in this case it is of a higher kind. Wise men frequent the houses of great noblemen not because they are temples of vanity, but as theatres of good breeding. There be gentlemen who have the credit of worldly wisdom, because they are not only themselves oracles of all nobleness by their example and their behaviour, but those who surround them form a well-bred academy of worldly wisdom of the best and noblest kind. 12. Nature and art. Material and workmanship. There is no beauty unadorned, and no excellence that would not become barbaric if it were not supported by artifice. This remedies the evil and improves the good. Nature scarcely ever gives us the very best, For that we must have recourse to art. Without this, the best of natural dispositions is uncultured, and half is lacking to any excellence if training is absent. Everyone has something unpolished without artificial training, and every kind of excellence needs some polish. 13. Act sometimes on second thoughts, sometimes on first impulse. Man's life is a warfare against the malice of men. Sagacity fights with strategic changes of intention. It never does what it threatens, it aims only at escaping notice. It aims in the air with dexterity, and strikes home in an unexpected direction, always seeking to conceal its game. It lets a purpose appear in order to attract the opponent's attention, but then turns round and conquers by the unexpected. But a penetrating intelligence anticipates this by watchfulness and lurks in ambush. It always understands the opposite of what the opponent wishes it to understand, and recognizes every feint of guile. It lets the first impulse pass by, and waits for the second, or even the third. Sagacity now rises to higher flights on seeing its artifice foreseen, and tries to deceive by truth itself, changes its game in order to change its deceit, and cheats by not cheating, and founds deception on the greatest candor. But the opposing intelligence is on guard with increased watchfulness, and discovers the darkness concealed by the light, and deciphers every move, the more subtle because more simple. In this way the guile of the python combats the far-darting rays of Apollo. 14. The thing itself, and the way it is done. Substance is not enough. Accident is also required, as the scholastics say. A bad manner spoils everything, even reason and justice. A good one supplies everything, gilds a no, sweetens truth, and adds a touch of beauty to old age itself. The how plays a large part in affairs. A good manner steals into the affections. Fine behavior is a joy in life, and a pleasant expression helps out of a difficulty in a remarkable way. 15. Keep ministering spirits. It is a privilege of the mighty to surround themselves with the champions of intellect. These extricate them from every fear of ignorance. These worry out for them the moot points of every difficulty. 'Tis a rare greatness to make use of the wise, and far exceeds the barbarous taste of Tigranes, who had a fancy for captive monarchs as his servants. It is a novel kind of supremacy, the best that life can offer, to have as servants by skill those who by nature are our masters. 'Tis a great thing to know, little to live. No real life without knowledge. There is remarkable cleverness in studying without study, in getting much by means of many, and through them all to become wise. Afterwards you speak in the council chamber on behalf of many, and as many sages speak through your mouth as were consulted beforehand. You thus obtain the fame of an oracle by others' toil. Such ministering spirits distill the best books, and serve up the quintessence of wisdom. But he that cannot have sages in service should have them for his friends. 16. Knowledge and good intentions together ensure continuance of success. A fine intellect wedded to a wicked will was always an unnatural monster. A wicked will envenoms all excellences. Helped by knowledge, it only ruins with greater subtlety. 'Tis a miserable superiority that only results in ruin. Knowledge without sense is double folly. 17. Vary the mode of action. Not always the same way, so as to distract attention, especially if there be a rival. Not always from first impulse, they will soon recognize the uniformity, and by anticipating, frustrate your designs. It is easy to kill a bird on the wing that flies straight, not so one that twists. Nor always act on second thoughts. They can discern the plan the second time. The enemy is on the watch. Great skill is required to circumvent him. The gamester never plays the card the opponent expects, still less that which he wants. 18. Application and ability. There is no attaining eminence without both, and where they unite, there is the greatest eminence. Mediocrity obtains more with application than superiority without it. Work is the price which is paid for reputation. What costs little is little worth. Even for the highest posts, it is only in some cases application that is wanting, rarely the talent. To prefer moderate success in great things than eminence in a humble post has the excuse of a generous mind, but not so to be content with humble mediocrity when you could shine among the highest. Thus nature and art are both needed, and application sets on them the seal. 19. Arouse no exaggerated expectations on entering. It is the usual ill luck of all celebrities not to fulfill afterwards the expectations beforehand formed of them. The real can never equal the imagined, for it is easy to form ideals, but very difficult to realize them. Imagination weds hope, and gives birth to much more than things are in themselves. However great the excellences, they never suffice to fulfill expectations, and as men find themselves disappointed with their exorbitant expectations, they are more ready to be disillusioned than to admire. Hope is a great falsifier of truth. Let skill guard against this by ensuring that fruition exceeds desire. A few creditable attempts at the beginning are sufficient to arouse curiosity without pledging one to the final object. It is better that reality should surpass the design, and is better than was thought. This rule does not apply to the wicked, for the same exaggeration is a great aid to them. They are defeated amid general applause, and what seemed at first extreme ruin comes to be thought quite bearable. 20. A man of the age. The rarest individuals depend on their age. It is not everyone that finds the age he deserves, and even when he finds it, he does not always know how to utilize it. Some men have been worthy of a better century, for every species of good does not always triumph. Things have their period, even excellences are subject to fashion. The sage has one advantage: he is immortal. If this is not his century, many others will be. End of section 4. Art of Worldly Wisdom by Balthasar Gracian. Translated by Joseph Jacobs. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Sandra Schmidt. 21. The Art of Being Lucky. There are rules of luck. It is not all chance with the wise. It can be assisted by care. Some content themselves with placing themselves confidently at the gate of fortune, waiting till she opens it. Others do better, and press forward and profit by their clever boldness, reaching the goddess and winning her favor on the wings of their virtue and valor. But on a true philosophy there is no other umpire than virtue and insight, for there is no luck or ill luck except wisdom and the reverse. 22. A man of knowledge to the point. Wise men arm themselves with tasteful and elegant erudition, a practical knowledge of what is going on, not of a common kind, but more like an expert. They possess a copious store of wise and witty sayings, and of noble deeds, and know how to employ them on fitting occasions. More is often taught by a jest than by the most serious teaching. Pet knowledge helps some more than the 7 arts, be they ever so liberal. 23. Be spotless. The indispensable condition of perfection. Few live without some weak point, either physical or moral, which they pamper because they could easily cure it. The keenness of others often regrets to see a slight defect attaching itself to a whole assembly of elevated qualities, and yet a single cloud can hide the whole of the sun. There are likewise patches on our reputation, which ill will soon finds out and is continually noticing. The highest skill is to transform them into ornament. So Caesar hid his natural defects with the laurel. 24. Keep the imagination under control, sometimes correcting, sometimes assisting it. For it is all important for our happiness, and even sets the reason right. It can tyrannize, and is not content with looking on, but influences, and even often dominates life, causing it to be happy or burdensome, according to the folly to which it leads. For it makes us either contented or discontented with ourselves. Before some, it continually holds up the penalties of action, and becomes the mortifying lash of these fools. To others it promises happiness and adventure with blissful delusion. It can do all this, unless the most prudent self-control keeps it in subjection. 25. Know how to take a hint. 'Twas once the art of arts to be able to discourse. Now 'tis no longer sufficient. We must know how to take a hint, especially in disabusing ourselves. He cannot make himself understood who does not himself easily understand. But on the other hand, there are pretended diviners of the heart and lynxes of the intentions. The very truths which concern us most can only be half spoken, but with attention we can grasp the whole meaning. When you hear anything favourable, keep a tight rein on your credulity. If unfavourable, give it the spur. 26. Find out each man's thumbscrew. 'Tis the art of setting their wills in action. It needs more skill than resolution. You must know where to get at any one. Every volition has a special motive, which varies according to taste. All men are idolaters, some of fame, others of self-interest, most of pleasure. Skill consists in knowing these idols, in order to bring them into play. Knowing any man's mainspring of motive, you have, as it were, the key to his will. Have resort to primary motors, which are not always the highest, but more often the lowest part of his nature. There are more dispositions badly organized than well. First, guess a man's ruling passion, appeal to it by a word, set it in motion by temptation, and you will infallibly give checkmate to his freedom of will. 27. Prize intensity more than extent. Excellence resides in quality, not in quantity. The best is always few and rare. Much lowers value. Even among men, giants are commonly the real dwarfs. Some reckon books by the thickness, as if they were written to try the brawn more than the brain. Extent alone never rises above mediocrity. It is the misfortune of universal geniuses that in attempting to be at home everywhere, are so nowhere. Intensity gives eminence, and rises to the heroic in matters sublime. 28. Common in nothing. First, not in taste. O great and wise, to be ill at ease when your deeds please the mob! The excesses of popular applause never satisfy the sensible. Some there are such chameleons of popularity that they find enjoyment not in the sweet savours of Apollo, but in the breath of the mob. Secondly, not in intelligence. Take no pleasure in the wonder of the mob, for ignorance never gets beyond wonder. While vulgar folly wanders, wisdom watches for the trick. 29. A man of rectitude clings to the sect of right with such tenacity of purpose that neither the passions of the mob nor the violence of the tyrant can ever cause him to transgress the bounds of right. But who shall be such a phoenix of equity? What a scanty following has rectitude! Many praise it indeed, but for others. Others follow it till danger threatens. Then the false deny it, the politic conceal it. For it cares not if it fights with friendship, power, or even self-interest. Then comes the danger of desertion. Then astute men make plausible distinctions so as not to stand in the way of their superiors or of reasons of state. But the straightforward and constant regard dissimulation as a kind of treason, and set more store on tenacity than on sagacity. Such are always to be found on the side of truth, and if they desert a party, they do not change from fickleness, but because the others have first deserted truth. 30. Have naught to do with occupations of ill repute, still less with fads that bring more notoriety than repute. There are many fanciful sects, and from all the prudent man has to flee. There are bizarre tastes that always take to their heart all that wise men repudiate. They live in love with singularity. This may make them well known indeed, but more as objects of ridicule than of repute. A cautious man does not even make profession of his wisdom, still less of those matters that make their followers ridiculous. These need not be specified, for common contempt has sufficiently singled them out. End of section 5. Of the Art of Worldly Wisdom by Balthasar Gracian. Translated by Joseph Jacobs. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Sandra Schmidt. 31. Select the lucky and avoid the unlucky. Ill luck is generally the penalty of folly, and there is no disease so contagious to those who share in it. Never open the door to a lesser evil, for other and greater ones invariably slink in after it. The greatest skill at cards is to know when to discard. The smallest of current trumps is worth more than the ace of trumps of the last game. When in doubt, follow the suit of the wise and the prudent. Sooner or later, they will win the odd trick. 32. Have the reputation of being gracious. 'Tis the chief glory of the high and mighty to be gracious, a prerogative of kings to conquer universal goodwill. That is the great advantage of a commanding position, to be able to do more good than others. Those make friends who do friendly acts. On the other hand, there are some who lay themselves out for not being gracious, not on account of the difficulty, but from a bad disposition. In all things they are the opposite of divine grace. 33. Know how to withdraw. If it is a great lesson in life to know how to deny, it is still greater to know how to deny oneself, as regards both affairs and persons. There are extraneous occupations which eat away precious time. To be occupied in what does not concern you is worse than doing nothing. It is not enough for a careful man not to interfere with others. He must see that they do not interfere with him. One is not obliged to belong so much to all as not to belong at all to oneself. So with friends, their help should not be abused, or more demanded from them than they themselves will grant. All excess is a failing, but above all in personal intercourse. A wise moderation in this best preserves the good will and esteem of all. For by this means that precious boon of courtesy is not gradually worn away. Thus you preserve your genius free to select the elect, and never sin against the unwritten laws of good taste. 34. Know your strongest point. Your preeminent gift, cultivate that, and you will assist the rest. Everyone would have excelled in something if he had known his strong point. Notice in what quality you surpass, and take charge of that. In some, judgment excels, in others, valor. Most do violence to their natural aptitude, and thus attain superiority in nothing. Time disillusionizes us too late of what first flattered the passions. 35. Think over things, most over the most important. All fools come to grief from want of thought. They never see even the half of things, and as they do not observe their own loss or gain, still less do they apply any diligence to them. Some make much of what imports little, and little of much, always weighing in the wrong scale. Many never lose their common sense, because they have none to lose. There are matters which should be observed with the closest attention of the mind, and thenceforth kept in its lowest depth. The wise man thinks over everything, but with a difference, most profoundly where there is some profound difficulty, and thinks that perhaps there is more in it than he thinks. Thus his comprehension extends as far as his apprehension. 36. In acting or refraining, weigh your luck. More depends on that than on noticing your temperament. If he is a fool who at 40 applies to Hippocrates for health, still more is he one who then applies to Seneca for wisdom. It is a great piece of skill to know how to guide your luck, even while waiting for it. For something is to be done with it by waiting so as to use it at the proper moment, since it has periods and offers opportunities, though one cannot calculate its path, its steps are so irregular. When you find fortune favorable, stride boldly forward, for she favors the bold, and, being a woman, the young. But if you have bad luck, keep retired so as not to redouble the influence of your unlucky star. 37. Keep a store of sarcasms, and know how to use them. This is the point of greatest tact in human intercourse. Such sarcasms are often thrown out to test man's mood, and by their means one often obtains the most subtle and penetrating touchstone of the heart. Other sarcasms are malicious, insolent, poisoned by envy or envenomed by passion, unexpected flashes which destroy at once all favour and esteem. Struck by the slightest word of this kind, many fall away from the closest intimacy with superiors or inferiors, which could not be the slightest shaken by a whole conspiracy of popular insinuation or private malevolence. Other sarcasms, on the other hand, work favourably, confirming and assisting one's reputation. But the greater the skill with which they are launched, the greater the caution with which they should be received, and the foresight with which they should be foreseen. For here a knowledge of the evil is in itself a means of defence, and the shot foreseen always misses its mark. 38. Leave your luck while winning. All the best players do it. A fine retreat is as good as a gallant attack. Bring your exploits under cover when there are enough, or even when there are many of them. Luck long lasting was ever suspicious. Interrupted seems safer, and is even sweeter to the taste for a little infusion of bitter sweet. The higher the heap of luck, the greater the risk of a slip, and down comes all. Fortune pays you sometimes for the intensity of her favours by the shortness of their duration. She soon tires of carrying any one long on her shoulders. 39. Recognize when things are ripe, and then enjoy them. The works of nature all reach a certain point of maturity. Up to that they improve, after that they degenerate. Few works of art reach such a point that they cannot be improved. It is an especial privilege of good taste to enjoy everything at its ripest. Not all can do this, nor do all who can know this. There is a ripening point, too, for fruits of intellect. It is well to know this, both for their value in use and for their value in exchange. 40. The good will of people. 'Tis much to gain universal admiration, more universal love. Something depends on natural disposition, more on practice. The first founds, the second then builds on that foundation. Brilliant parts suffice not, though they are presupposed. Win good opinion, and 'tis easy to win good will. Kindly acts, besides, are required to produce kindly feelings. Doing good with both hands, good words and better deeds, loving so as to be loved. Courtesy is the politic witchery of great personages. First lay hand on deeds, and then on pens. Words follow swords, for there is good will to be won among writers, and it is eternal. End of section 6.
Of the Art of Worldly Wisdom. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, visit LibriVox.org. Recorded by Linda Sonrisa, Servision.org. The Art of Worldly Wisdom by Baltasar Gracian, translated by Joseph Jacobs. Section 7. 41. Never exaggerate. It is an important object of attention not to talk in superlatives, so as neither to offend against truth, nor to give a mean idea of one's understanding. Exaggeration is a prodigality of the judgment, which shows the narrowness of one's knowledge or one's taste. Praise arouses lively curiosity, begets desire, and if afterwards the value does not correspond to the price, as generally happens, expectation revolts against the deception, and revenges itself by underestimating the thing recommended and the person recommending. A prudent man goes more cautiously to work, and prefers to err by omission than by commission. Extraordinary things are rare, therefore moderate ordinary valuation. Exaggeration is a branch of lying, and you lose by it the credit of good taste, which is much, and of good sense, which is more. 42. Born to command. It is a secret force of superiority not to have to get on by artful trickery, but by an inborn power of rule. All submit to it without knowing why, recognizing the secret vigor of connatural authority. Such magisterial spirits are kings by merit and lions by innate privilege. By the esteem which they inspire, they hold the hearts and minds of the rest. If their other qualities permit, such men are born to be the prime motors of the state. They perform more by a gesture than others by a long harangue. 43. Think with the few and speak with the many. By swimming against the stream, it is impossible to remove error, easy to fall into danger. Only a Socrates can undertake it. To dissent from others' views is regarded as an insult because it is their condemnation. Disgust is doubled on account of the thing blamed and of the person who praised it. Truth is for the few. Error is both common and vulgar. The wise man is not known by what he says on the housetops, for there he speaks not with his own voice, but with that of common folly, however much his inmost thoughts may gainsay it. The prudent avoid being contradicted as much as contradicting. Though they have their censure ready, they are not ready to publish it. Thought is free. Force cannot and should not be used to it. The wise man therefore retires into silence, and if he allows himself to come out of it, he does so in the shade and before few and fit persons. 44. Sympathy with great minds. It is an heroic quality to agree with heroes. 'Tis like a miracle of nature for mystery and for use. There is a natural kinship of hearts and minds. Its effects are such that vulgar ignorance scents witchcraft. Esteem established, goodwill follows, which at times reaches affection. It persuades without words and obtains without earning. This sympathy is sometimes active, sometimes passive, both alike felicific, the more so, the more sublime. 'Tis a great art to recognize, to distinguish, and to utilize this gift. No amount of energy suffices without that favor of nature. 45. Use, but do not abuse, cunning. One ought not to delight in it, still less to boast of it. Everything artificial should be concealed, most of all cunning, which is hated. Deceit is much in use, therefore our caution has to be redoubled, but not so as to show itself, for it arouses distrust, causes much annoy, awakens revenge, and gives rise to more ills than you would imagine. To go to work with caution is of great advantage in action, and there is no greater proof of wisdom. The greatest skill in any deed consists in the sure mastery with which it is executed. 46. Master your antipathies. We often allow ourselves to take dislikes, and that before we know anything of a person. At times this innate yet vulgar aversion attaches itself to eminent personalities. Good sense masters this feeling, for there is nothing more discreditable than to dislike those better than ourselves. As sympathy with great men ennobles us, so dislike to them degrades us. 47. Avoid affairs of honor. One of the chiefest aims of prudence. In men of great ability, The extremes are kept far asunder, so that there is a long distance between them, and they always keep in the middle of their caution, so that they take time to break through it. It is easier to avoid such affairs than to come well out of them. They test our judgment. It is better to avoid them than to conquer in them. One affair of honor leads to another, and may lead to an affair of dishonor. There are men so constituted by nature or by nation that they easily enter upon such obligations. But for him that walks by the light of reason, such a matter requires long thinking over. There is more valor needed not to take up the affair than to conquer in it. When there is one fool ready for the occasion, one may excuse oneself from being the second. 48. Be thorough. How much depends on the person. The interior must be at least as much as the exterior. How much depends on the person. The interior must be at least as much as the exterior. There are natures all frontage, like houses for want of means have the portico of a palace leading to the rooms of a cottage. It is no use boring into such persons, although they bore you, for conversation flags after the first salutation. They prance through the first compliments like Sicilian barbs, but silence soon succeeds, for the flow of words soon ceases where there is no spring of thoughts. Others may be taken in by them because they themselves have but a view of the surface, but not the prudent, who look within them and find nothing there except material for scorn. 49. Observation and judgment. A man with these rules things, not they him. He sounds at once the profoundest depths. He is a phrenologist by means of physiognomy. On seeing a person he understands him, and judges of his inmost nature. From a few observations he deciphers the most hidden recesses of his nature. Keen observation, subtle insight, judicious inference. With these he discovers, notices, grasps, and comprehends everything. 50. Never lose self-respect, or be too familiar with oneself. Let your own right feeling be the true standard of your rectitude, and owe more to the strictness of your own self-judgment than to all external sanctions. Leave off anything unseemly more from regard for your own self-respect than from fear of external authority. Pay regard to that, and there is no need of Seneca's imaginary tutor. End of section 7. Worldly Wisdom. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Linda Sonrisa, SirVision.org. The Art of Worldly Wisdom by Baltasar Gracian. Translated by Joseph Jacobs. Section 8. 51. Know how to choose well. Most of life depends thereon. It needs good taste and correct judgment, for which neither intellect nor study suffices. To be choice, you must choose, and for this 2 things are needed, to be able to choose at all, and then to choose the best. There are many men of fecund and subtle mind, of keen judgment, of much learning, and of great observation, who yet are at a loss when they come to choose. They always take the worst, as if they had tried to go wrong. Thus, this is one of the greatest gifts from above. 52. Never be put out. 'Tis a great aim of prudence never to be embarrassed. It is the sign of a real man, of a noble heart, for magnanimity is not easily put out. The passions are the humors of the soul, and every excess in them weakens prudence. If they overflow through the mouth, the reputation will be in danger. Let a man, therefore, be so much and so great a master over himself, that neither in the most fortunate nor in the most adverse circumstances can anything cause his reputation injury by disturbing his self-possession, but rather enhance it by showing his superiority. 53. Diligent and intelligent. Diligence promptly executes what intelligence slowly excogitates. Hurry is the failing of fools. They know not the crucial point and set to work without preparation. On the other hand, the wise more often fail from procrastination. Foresight begets deliberation, and remiss action often nullifies prompt judgment. Celerity is the mother of good fortune. He has done much who leaves nothing over till tomorrow. Festina lente is a royal motto. 54. Know how to show your teeth. Even hares can pull the mane of a dead lion. There is no joke about courage. Give way to the first, and you must yield to the second, and so on till the last. And to gain your point at last costs as much trouble as would have gained much more at first. Moral courage exceeds physical. It should be like a sword kept ready for use in the scabbard of caution. It is the shield of great place. Moral cowardice lowers one more than physical. Many have had eminent qualities, yet, for want of a stout heart, they passed inanimate lives and found a tomb in their own sloth. Wise nature has thoughtfully combined in the bee the sweetness of its honey with the sharpness of its sting. 55. Wait. It's a sign of a noble heart dowered with patience, never to be in a hurry, never to be in a passion. First be master over yourself if you would be master over others. You must pass through the circumference of time before arriving at the center of opportunity. A wise reserve seasons the aims and matures the means. Time's crutch effects more than the iron club of Hercules. God himself chasteneth not with a rod, but with time. He spake a great word who said, Time and I against any two. Charles V. Fortune herself rewards waiting with the first prize. 56. Have presence of mind. The child of a happy promptitude of spirit. Owing to this vivacity and wide awakeness, there is no fear of danger or mischance. Many reflect much only to go wrong in the end. Others attain their aim without thinking of it beforehand. There are natures of anti-peristasis who work best in an emergency. They are like monsters who succeed in all they do offhand, but fail in aught they think over. A thing occurs to them at once or never. For them there is no court of appeal. Celerity wins applause because it proves remarkable capacity, subtlety of judgment, prudence in action. 57. Slow and sure. Early enough if well. Quickly done can be quickly undone. To last an eternity requires an eternity of preparation. Only excellence counts, only achievement endures. Profound intelligence is the only foundation for immortality. Worth much, costs much. The precious metals are the heaviest. 58. Adapt yourself to your company. There is no need to show your ability before everyone. Employ no more force than is necessary. Let there be no unnecessary expenditure either of knowledge or of power. The skillful falconer only flies enough birds to serve for the chase. If there is too much display today, there will be nothing to show tomorrow. Always have some novelty wherewith to dazzle. To show something fresh each day keeps expectation alive and conceals the limits of capacity. 59. Finish off well. In the house of fortune, if you enter by the gate of pleasure, you must leave by that of sorrow, and vice versa. You ought therefore to think of the finish, and attach more importance to a graceful exit than to applause on entrance. 'Tis the common lot of the unlucky to have a very fortunate outset and a very tragic end. The important point is not the vulgar applause on entrance, that comes to nearly all, but the general feeling at exit. Few in life are felt to deserve an encore. Fortune rarely accompanies anyone to the door. Warmly as she may welcome the coming, she speeds but coldly the parting guest. 60. A sound judgment. Some are born wise, and with this natural advantage enter upon their studies with a moiety already mastered. With age and experience their reason ripens, and thus they attain a sound judgment. They abhor everything whimsical as leading prudence astray, especially in matters of state, where certainty is so necessary, owing to the importance of the affairs involved. Such men deserve to stand by the helm of state, either as pilots or as men at the wheel. End of section 8. Wisdom. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Linda Sonrisa, Servision.org. The Art of Worldly Wisdom by Baltasar Gracian. Section 9. 61. To excel in what is excellent. A great rarity among excellences. You cannot have a great man without something preeminent. Mediocrities never win applause. Eminence in some distinguished post distinguishes one from the vulgar mob and ranks us with the elect. To be distinguished in a small post is to be great in little. The more comfort, the less glory. The highest eminence in great affairs has the royal characteristic of exciting admiration and winning goodwill. 62. Use good instruments. Some would have the subtlety of their wits proven by the meanness of their instruments. 'Tis a dangerous satisfaction, and deserves a fatal punishment. The excellence of a minister never diminished the greatness of his Lord. All the glory of exploits reverts to the principal actor, also all the blame. Fame only does business with principles. She does not say, "This had good, that had bad servants," but "This was a good artist, that a bad one." Let your assistants be selected and tested therefore, for you have to trust to them for an immortality of fame. 63. To be the first of the kind is an excellence, and to be eminent in it as well, a double one. To have the first move is a great advantage when the players are equal. Many a man would have been a veritable phoenix if he had been the first of the sort. Those who come first are the heirs of fame. The others get only a younger brother's allowance. Whatever they do, they cannot persuade the world they are anything more than parrots. The skill of prodigies may find a new path to eminence, but prudence accompanies them all the way. By the novelty of their enterprises, sage write their names in the golden book of heroes. Some prefer to be first in things of minor import than second in greater exploits. 64. Avoid worry. Such prudence brings its own reward. It escapes much, and is thus the midwife of comfort and so of happiness. Neither give nor take bad news unless it can help. Some men's ears are stuffed with the sweets of flattery, others with the bitters of scandal, while some cannot live without a daily annoyance no more than Mithridates could without poison. It is no rule of life to prepare for yourself lifelong trouble in order to give a temporary enjoyment to another, however near and dear. You never ought to spoil your own chances to please another who advises and keeps out of the affair, and in all cases where to oblige another involves disobliging yourself, 'tis a standing rule that it is better he should suffer now than you afterwards, and in vain. 65. Elevated taste. You can train it like the intellect. Full knowledge whets desire and increases enjoyment. You may know a noble spirit by the elevation of his taste. It must be a great thing that can satisfy a great mind. Big bites for big mouths, lofty things for lofty spirits. Before their judgment the bravest tremble, the most perfect lose confidence. Things of the first importance are few. Let appreciation be rare. Taste can be imparted by intercourse. great good luck to associate with the highest taste. But do not affect to be dissatisfied with everything. 'Tis the extreme of folly, and more odious if from affectation than if from quixotry. Some would have God create another world and other ideals to satisfy their fantastic imagination. 66. See that things end well. Some regard more the rigor of the game than the winning of it, but to the world the discredit of the final failure does away with any recognition of the previous care. The victor need not explain. The world does not notice the details of the measures employed, but only the good or ill result. You lose nothing if you gain your end. A good end gilds everything, however unsatisfactory the means. Thus at times it is part of the art of life to transgress the rules of the art, if you cannot end well otherwise. 67. Prefer callings en evidence. Most things depend on the satisfaction of others. Esteem is to excellence what the zephyr is to flowers, the breath of life. There are some callings which gain universal esteem, while others more important are without credit. The former, pursued before the eyes of all, obtain the universal favor. The others, though they are rarer and more valuable, remain obscure and unperceived, honored but not applauded. Among princes, conquerors are the most celebrated, and therefore the kings of Aragon earned such applause as warriors, conquerors, and great men. An able man will prefer callings en evidence, which all men know of and utilize, and he thus becomes immortalized by universal suffrage. 68. It is better to help with intelligence than with memory. The more as the latter needs only recollection, the former vous. Many persons omit the à propos because it does not occur to them. A friend's advice on such occasions may enable them to see the advantages. 'Tis one of the greatest gifts of mind to be able to offer what is needed at the moment. For want of that, many things fail to be performed. Share the light of your intelligence when you have any, and ask for it when you have it not, the first cautiously, the last anxiously. Give no more than a hint. This finesse is especially needful when it touches the interest of him whose attention you awaken. You should give but a taste at first, and then pass on to more when that is not sufficient. If he thinks of no, go in search of yes. Therein lies the cleverness, for most things are not obtained simply because they are not attempted. 69. He is a great man who never allows himself to be influenced by the impressions of others. Self-reflection is the school of wisdom. To know one's disposition and to allow for it, even going to the other extreme so as to find the juste milieu between nature and art. Self-knowledge is the beginning of self-improvement. There be some whose humors are so monstrous that they are always under the influence of one or the other of them and put them in place of their real inclinations. They are torn asunder by such disharmony and get involved in contradictory obligations. Such excesses not only destroy firmness of will, all power of judgment gets lost, desire and knowledge pulling in opposite directions. 70. Know how to refuse. One ought not to give way in everything, nor to everybody. To know how to refuse is therefore as important as to know how to consent. This is especially the case with men of position. All depends on the how. Some men's no is thought of more than the yes of others, for a gilded no is more satisfactory than a dry yes. There are some who always have no on their lips, whereby they make everything distasteful. No always comes first with them, and when sometimes they give way after all, it does them no good on account of the unpleasing herald. Your refusal need not be point blank. Let the disappointment come by degrees, nor let the refusal be final. That would be to destroy dependence. Let some spice of hope remain to soften the rejection. Let politeness compensate, and fine words supply the place of deeds. Yes and no are soon said, but give much to think over. End of section 9. Art of Worldly Wisdom. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Linda Sonrisa, Survision.org. The Art of Worldly Wisdom by Baltasar Gracian. Translated by Joseph Jacobs. Section 10. 71. Do not vacillate. Let not your actions be abnormal, either from disposition or affectation. An able man is always the same in his best qualities. He gets the credit of trustworthiness. If he changes, he does so for good reason or good consideration. In matters of conduct, change is hateful. There are some who are different every day. Their intelligence varies, still more their will, and with this their fortune. Yesterday's white is today's black. Today's no was yesterday's yes. They always give the lie to their own credit and destroy their credit with others. 72. Be resolute. Bad execution of your designs does less harm than irresolution in forming them. Streams do less harm flowing than when dammed up. There are some men so infirm of purpose that they always require direction from others, and this not on account of any perplexity, for they judge clearly, but from sheer incapacity for action. It needs some skill to find out difficulties, but more to find a way out of them. There are others who are never in straits. Their clear judgment and determined character fit them for the highest callings. Their intelligence tells them where to insert the thin end of the wedge. Their resolution how to drive it home. They soon get through anything. As soon as they have done with one sphere of action, they are ready for another. Affianced to fortune, they make themselves sure of success. 73. Utilize slips. That is how smart people get out of difficulties. They extricate themselves from the most intricate labyrinth by some witty application of a bright remark. They get out of a serious contention by an airy nothing, or by raising a smile. Most of the great leaders are well grounded in this art. When you have to refuse, it is often the polite way to talk of something else. Sometimes it proves the highest understanding not to understand. 74. Do not be unsociable. The truest wild beasts live in the most populous places. To be inaccessible is the fault of those who distrust themselves, whose honors change their manners. It is no way of earning people's goodwill by being ill-tempered with them. It is a sight to see one of those unsociable monsters who make a point of being proudly impertinent. Their dependents, who have the misfortune to be obliged to speak with them, enter as if prepared for a fight with a tiger, armed with patience and with fear. To obtain their post, these persons must have ingratiated themselves with everyone, but having once obtained it, they seek to indemnify themselves by disobliging all. It is a condition of their position that they should be accessible to all, yet from pride or spleen they are so to none. 'Tis a civil way to punish such men by letting them alone, and depriving them of opportunities of improvement, by granting them no opportunity of intercourse. 75. Choose an heroic ideal. But rather to emulate than to imitate. There are exemplars of greatness, living texts of honor. Let everyone have before his mind the chief of his calling, not so much to follow him as to spur himself on. Alexander wept, not on account of Achilles dead and buried, but over himself, because his fame had not yet spread throughout the world. Nothing arouses ambition so much in the heart as the trumpet clang of another's fame. The same thing that sharpens envy nourishes a generous spirit. 76. Do not always be jesting. Wisdom is shown in serious matters and is more appreciated than mere wit. He that is always ready for jests is never ready for serious things. They resemble liars in that men never believe either, always expecting a lie in one, a joke in the other. One never knows when you speak with judgment, which is the same as if you had none. A continual jest soon loses all zest. Many get the rapture of being witty, but thereby lose the credit of being sensible. Jest has its little hour, seriousness should have all the rest. 77. Be all things to all men. A discreet Proteus, learned with the learned, saintly with the sainted. It is the great art to gain everyone's suffrages. Their goodwill gains general agreement. Notice men's moods and adapt yourself to each, genial or serious as the case may be. Follow their lead, glossing over the changes as cunningly as possible. This is an indispensable art for dependent persons. But this savoir-faire calls for great cleverness. He only will find no difficulty who has a universal genius in his knowledge and universal ingenuity in his wit. 78. The art of undertaking things. Fools rush in through the door, for folly is always bold. The same simplicity which robs them of all attention to precautions deprives them of all sense of shame at failure. But prudence enters with more deliberation. Its forerunners are caution and care. They advance and discover whether you can also advance without danger. Every rush forward is freed from danger by caution, while fortune sometimes helps in such cases. Step cautiously where you suspect depth. Sagacity goes cautiously forward, while precaution covers the ground. Nowadays there are unsuspected depths in human intercourse. You must therefore cast the lead at every step. 79. A genial disposition, if with moderation, is an accomplishment, not a defect. A grain of gaiety seasons all. The greatest men join in the fun at times, and it makes them liked by all. But they should always on such occasions preserve their dignity, nor go beyond the bounds of decorum. Others again get themselves out of difficulty quickest by a joke, for there are things you must take in fun, though others perhaps mean them in earnest. You show a sense of placability, which acts as a magnet on all hearts. 80. Take care to get information. We live by information, not by sight. We exist by faith in others. The ear is the area gate of truth, but the front door of lies. The truth is generally seen, rarely heard. Seldom she comes in elemental purity, especially from afar. There is always some admixture of the moods of those through whom she has passed. The passions tinge her with their colors wherever they touch her, sometimes favorably, sometimes the reverse. She always brings out the disposition, therefore receive her with caution from him that praises, with more caution from him that blames. Pay attention to the intention of the speaker. You should know beforehand on what footing he comes. Let reflection assay falsity and exaggeration. End of section 10. Section 11 of The Art of Worldly Wisdom. This is the LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Linda Sonrisa, Survision.org. The Art of Worldly Wisdom by Baltasar Gracian, translated by Joseph Jacobs. 81. Renew your brilliance. 'Tis the privilege of the phoenix. Ability is wont to grow old, and with it fame. The staleness of custom weakens admiration, and a mediocrity that's new often eclipses the highest excellence grown old. Try therefore to be born again in valor, in genius, in fortune, in all. Display startling novelties, rise afresh like the sun every day. Change too the scene on which you shine, so that your loss may be felt in the old scenes of your triumph, while the novelty of your powers wins you applause in the new. 82. Drain nothing to the dregs, neither good nor ill. A sage once reduced all virtue to the golden mean. Push right to the extreme, and it becomes wrong. Press all the juice from an orange, and it becomes bitter. Even in enjoyment, never go to extremes. Thought too subtle is dull. If you milk a cow too much, you draw blood, not milk. 83. Allow yourself some venial fault. Some such carelessness is often the greatest recommendation of talent, for envy exercises ostracism, most envenomed when most polite. It counts it to perfection as a failing that it has no faults, for being perfect in all, it condemns it in all. It becomes an Argus, all eyes for imperfection, 'tis its only consolation. Blame is like the lightning, it hits the highest. Let Homer nod now and then, and affect some negligence in valor, or in intellect, not in prudence, so as to disarm malevolence, or at least to prevent its bursting with its own venom. You thus leave your cloak on the horns of envy, in order to save your immortal parts. 84. Make use of your enemies. You should learn to seize things not by the blade which cuts, but by the handle which saves you from harm. Especially is this the rule with the doings of your enemies. A wise man gets more use from his enemies than a fool from his friends. Their ill will often levels mountains of difficulties which one would otherwise not face. Many have had their greatness made for them by their enemies. Flattery is more dangerous than hatred, because it covers the stains which the other causes to be wiped out. The wise will turn ill will into a mirror more faithful than that of kindness, and remove or improve the faults referred to. Caution thrives well when rivalry and ill will are next-door neighbors. 85. Do not play manville. It is a fault of excellence that being so much in use, it is liable to abuse. Because all covet it, all are vexed by it. It is a great misfortune to be of use to nobody, scarcely less to be of use to everybody. People who reach this stage lose by gaining, and at last bore those who desired them before. These manils wear away all kinds of excellence. Losing the earlier esteem of the few, they obtain discredit among the vulgar. The remedy against this extreme is to moderate your brilliance. Be extraordinary in your excellence if you like, but be ordinary in your display of it. The more light a torch gives, the more it burns away, and the nearer 'tis to going out. Show yourself less, and you will be rewarded by being esteemed more. 86. Prevent scandal. Many heads go to make the mob, and in each of them are eyes for malice to use, and a tongue for detraction to wag. If a single ill report spread, it casts a blemish on your fair fame, and if it clings to you with a nickname, your reputation is in danger. Generally it is some salient defect or ridiculous trait that gives rise to the rumors. At times these are malicious additions of private envy to general distrust. For there are wicked tongues that ruin a great reputation more easily by a witty sneer than by a direct accusation. It is easy to get into bad repute, because it is easy to believe evil of anyone. It is not easy to clear yourself. The wise, accordingly, avoid these mischances, guarding against vulgar scandal with sedulous vigilance. It is far easier to prevent than to rectify. 87. Culture and elegance. Man is a born barbarian, and only raises himself above the beast by culture. Culture therefore makes the man. The more a man, the higher. Thanks to it, Greece could call the rest of the world barbarians. Ignorance is very raw. Nothing contributes so much to culture as knowledge. But even knowledge is coarse, if without elegance. Not alone must our intelligence be elegant, but our desires, and above all, our conversation. Some men are naturally elegant in internal and external qualities, in their thoughts, in their address, in their dress, which is the rind of the soul, and in their talents, which is its fruit. There are others, on the other hand, so gauche that everything about them, even their very excellencies, is tarnished by an intolerable and barbaric want of neatness. 88. Let your behavior be fine and noble. A great man ought not to be little in his behavior. He ought never to pry too minutely into things, least of all in unpleasant matters. For though it is important to know all, It is not necessary to know all about all. One ought to act in such cases with the generosity of a gentleman, conduct worthy of a gallant man. To overlook forms a large part of the work of ruling. Most things must be left unnoticed among relatives and friends, and even among enemies. All superfluity is annoying, especially in things that annoy. To keep hovering around the object of your annoyance is a kind of mania. Generally speaking, every man behaves according to his heart and his understanding. 89. Know yourself. In talents and capacity, in judgment and inclination. You cannot master yourself unless you know yourself. There are mirrors for the face, but none for the mind. Let careful thought about yourself serve as a substitute. When the outer image is forgotten, keep the inner one to improve and perfect. Learn the force of your intellect and capacity for affairs. Test the force of your courage in order to apply it, and keep your foundation secure and your head clear for everything. 80. The secret of long life. Lead a good life. Two things bring life speedily to an end: folly and immorality. Some lose their life because they have not the intelligence to keep it, others because they have not the will. Just as virtue is its own reward, so is vice its own punishment. He who lives a fast life runs through life in a double sense. A virtuous life never dies. The firmness of the soul is communicated to the body, and a good life is long, not only in intention, but also in extension. End of section 11. Section 12 of The Art of Worldly Wisdom. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Linda Sonrisa, Survision.org. The Art of Worldly Wisdom by Baltasar Gracian. Translated by Joseph Jacobs. Section 12. 91. Never set to work at anything if you have any doubts of its prudence. A suspicion of failure in the mind of the doer is proof positive of it in that of the onlooker, especially if he is a rival. If in the heat of action your judgment feels scruples, it will afterwards, in cool reflection, condemn it as a piece of folly. Action is dangerous where prudence is in doubt. Better leave such things alone. Wisdom does not trust to probabilities. It always marches in the midday light of reason. How can an enterprise succeed which the judgment condemns as soon as conceived? And if resolutions passed nem con by inner court often turn out unfortunately, what can we expect of those undertaken by a doubting reason and a vacillating judgment? 92. Transcendent Wisdom. I mean in everything. The first and highest rule of all deed and speech, the more necessary to be followed the higher and more numerous our posts, is, an ounce of wisdom is worth more than tons of cleverness. It is the only sure way, though it may not gain so much applause. The reputation of wisdom is the last triumph of fame. It is enough if you satisfy the wise, for their judgment is the touchstone of true success. 93. Versatility. A man of many excellences equals many men. By imparting his own enjoyment of life to his circle, he enriches their life. Variety in excellences is the delight of life. It is a great art to profit by all that is good, and since nature has made man in his highest development an abstract of herself, so let art create in him a true microcosm by training his taste and intellect. 94. Keep the extent of your abilities unknown. The wise man does not allow his knowledge and abilities to be sounded to the bottom if he desires to be honored by all. He allows you to know them, but not to comprehend them. No one must know the extent of his abilities, lest he be disappointed. No one ever has an opportunity of fathoming him entirely, for guesses and doubts about the extent of his talents arouse more veneration than accurate knowledge of them, be they ever so great. 95. Keep expectation alive. Keep stirring it up. Let much promise more, and great deeds herald greater. Do not rest your whole fortune on a single cast of the die. It requires great skill to moderate your forces so as to keep expectation from being dissipated. 96. The highest discretion. It is the throne of reason, the foundation of prudence. By its means success is gained at little cost. It is a gift from above, and should be prayed for as the first and best quality. 'Tis the main piece of the panoply, and so important that its absence makes a man imperfect, whereas with other qualities it is merely a question of more or less. All the actions of life depend on its application. All require its assistance, for everything needs intelligence. Discretion consists in a natural tendency to the most rational course, combined with a liking for the surest. 97. Obtain and preserve a reputation. It is the usufruct of fame. It is expensive to obtain a reputation, for it only attaches to distinguished abilities, which are as rare as mediocrities are common. Once obtained, it is easily preserved. It confers many an obligation, but it does more. When it is owing to elevated powers or lofty spheres of action, it rises to a kind of veneration and yields a sort of majesty. But it is only a well-founded reputation that lasts permanently. 98. Write your intentions in cipher. The passions are the gates of the soul. The most practical knowledge consists in disguising them. He that plays with cards exposed runs a risk of losing the stakes. The reserve of caution should combat the curiosity of inquirers. Adopt the policy of the cuttlefish. Do not even let your tastes be known, lest others utilize them, either by running counter to them or by flattering them. 99. Reality and appearance. Things pass for what they seem, not for what they are. Few see inside, many take to the outside. It is not enough to be right, if right seem false and ill. 100. A man without illusions, a wise Christian, a philosophic courtier. Be all these, not merely seem to be them, still less affect to be them. Philosophy is nowadays discredited, but yet it was always the chiefest concern of the wise. The art of thinking has lost all its former repute. Seneca introduced it at Rome. It went to court for some time, but now it is considered out of place there. And yet the discovery of deceit was always thought the true nourishment of a thoughtful mind, the true delight of a virtuous soul. End of section 12.